For Global Business Update, Michael Wilson joins us now from London. Great to have you, Michael. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. So all the Fed speak yesterday was fairly hawkish and a very mixed reaction, as you'd expect, as far as Asia Pacific is concerned. But I wouldn't pay too much attention to that, mainly because China, South Korea, and Hong Kong, China, and Taiwan are on holiday today. So I don't think we're going to see much of the impact of what Jerome Powell was saying last night. It was relatively hawkish, the usual kind of message, really. Yes, there has been a pause, and yes, they want to clamp down on inflation, and yes, the assumption therefore is that more interest rate rises are headed our way from the United States. Australia is the latest large nation to have a go at Twitter. They're threatening to fine it 475,000 equivalent American dollars every day unless they are showing how they are handling what they call online, or what the Australians call online hate messages on Twitter. And apparently the company has not been transparent to the satisfaction of the Australian authorities what it's doing about that. Anyway, so a fine over them. We still have to hear from Twitter. India. Now, we've talked a little in the... Actually, we've talked quite a lot in the past about India. We know that Modi is in the United States right now taking yoga lessons, as apparently, or sessions rather, to reduce the tension of the discussions. But overseas investors are buying the India story a great deal. And their Sensex index, that's their main equity index, is up 14%. The total value of the index as we speak is $3.5 trillion American equivalent dollars, which is bigger than the UK and France. So investors are buying the investment story of India right now. Diamonds, we're going to move on to those. Maybe a girl's best friend, as the old song says, but investors don't think so. Down 18% from the peak, which is February 2022. That was the middle of the pandemic. The extraordinary story behind this, apparently, is that the kind of savings that were built up during the pandemic went on buying stones like this for one's loved ones. But now the cost of living crisis and other expenses are coming in. The recovery has not been as fast, and therefore diamonds are losing a bit of their luster. There's also competition, as I understand it, from man-made diamonds and slower Chinese economic recovery. The Chinese are very, very keen buyers of diamonds and an uncertain economic backdrop. So all of those hitting the price of diamonds. So gentlemen, start buying now. US recap, stock futures relatively flat. I said that yesterday there had been a 3-day losing streak. That it looks like continuing as far as we can tell, but digesting really what Jerome Powell was saying, more about his kind of hawkish comments. He said there was a long way to go, his words, to defeat inflation, and of course, investors will be looking at the weekly jobless claims, which are thought to be 250,000. But we'll leave those until Rotis and I talk about those later on today. But basically, as far as the US is concerned, taking what those relatively hawkish comments from Jay Powell in their stride, but still doubts about the bullishness of the whole equity situation right now in the United States. Let's add Intel to that list, if we may, please. Drops 6% yesterday because it's announced its chip manufacturing. It's really now doubling down on that. It wants to compete with the Taiwan semiconductor manufacturer, the TSCM, which actually is the biggest in the world. Investors are not really buying the story and not thinking that Intel will actually get there. It needs to get there, according to investors, by 2026. If it gets there, then good luck to it. But investors so far not buying that story. Going to turn to Turkey right now. Not in the EU, but sort of in the area, and geographically at least. There is the new governor of the central bank bank in Turkey. She's Hafiz Gay Erkan. She's got a lot of experience as far as capital markets are concerned. And the feeling is now that interest rates will rise. Yes, I did say rise in Turkey. It might be quite steep, might be up to 20. Goldman's are saying it could be up to 40%. But either way, she's joining the sort of orthodoxy of defeating inflation by raising interest rates. Apparently, we will see about that. The EU, now there's a big Ukraine reconstruction meeting taking place in London yesterday and today. So far, the EU is pledging $54.5 billion from 2024 to 2027 to help rebuild Ukraine. I would suggest, and the UK has joined in here, the US is so far donating 1.1 billion. The UK is underpinning $3 billion worth of World Bank loan. But I would say to all, who am I to say this, but just looking at things, it's not at all certain how long this war of attrition will actually go on. In fact, it's not at all sure that Ukraine will win it in the final place either. But those are different geopolitical subjects. But that's what's being thought of right now. Now, today, a big day as far as the Bank of England is concerned. Interest rate. Undoubtedly, the announcement will happen at midday today. Undoubtedly, there'll be an increase. Question is, as usual, how much? 0.25% to time with the other increases, or 0.5%? Is it now time for them to take a real stand against inflation? And they're under an enormous amount of pressure. The Labour Party is saying that mortgage holders need to be helped. It may be that some of those mortgages are extended. It may be that some of them become interest-only loans for a little while to help with this enormous increase in these costs. But nevertheless, Bank of England in a lot of people's sights right now, feeling as though they've let inflation get out of control. They've not been paying attention to the granular evidence that they discover throughout our nation every week, and they're going their way. They're going their way. There will be a lot of criticism fired at the Bank of England, and still a lot of that still to come. Oil has rebounded very, very slightly. West Texas Intermediate is round about $70 a barrel, but and the weaker dollar and what looks like increased summer demand is keeping the prices relatively high. Gold is not doing so well in terms of an investment, basically because central banks appear to have either stopped getting slightly looser. The tightening seems to continue. That's not really favouring gold as interest rates are thought to rise, but we'll see. And finally, crypto. Now, Bitcoin has actually burst through its $30,000 barrier. It's the first time since the 26th. And the reason for this, it's very interesting, this is that BlackRock, amongst others, BlackRock being, I think it's probably the world's largest private equity company, is thinking of getting involved in the market by issuing an ETF, an exchange-traded fund, which, as you probably know, tracks the index rather than is a direct investment in cryptos. But nevertheless, it's a move, perhaps, to Bitcoin and the other cryptos moving slightly closer to the mainstream. We will see. That is the global view.
Real quickly, I'd like to ask a couple of things. Now that Turkey is trying to detour, is this not medicine after death? Because now you're trying to ramp up interest rates. You have probably destroyed the economic prospect of Turkey with what Erdogan was trying out. Is this not medicine after death?
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, I'm astounded by this, but that apparently is what is being expected of how she sells this story to the newly re-elected president. I do not know, but that's what the news is this morning, and I'm astounded that Goldman Sachs thinks that it's going to raise rates could go up to 40% in Turkey. I have no idea how the central bank governor would sell this, and why should Erdogan suddenly change his orthodoxy, where he wants to keep interest rates low, to the rest of the world's orthodoxy about interest rates, which, as we know, unfortunately to our cost, means raising them to defeat inflation. I'm with you, Rifai. I'm mystified by this completely. I merely relate to you the news as it is this morning.
All right, Michael. Let's go on to Twitter and its many, shall we say, challenges, woes, but tough job for Linda Yaccarino, who's taken over as boss of Twitter. In Australia, they're looking to fine them, as you've mentioned, for not moderating online hate properly. I know for social media companies like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, it's been a challenge in terms of moderating online content and moderating hate. But also, a few days back in the US, a few music companies came together to sue them for about $250,000 for infringement on licenses for music platforms. How do you think Twitter would manage this and still rise, despite the fact that it looks like numbers are dropping?
If I were Ms. Yaccarino, this is what I'd be saying as far as the music business is concerned. Yes, really sorry about that. We've done this. We must pay you. But do understand that we are giving you an additional platform for your music. So that's how I deal with the music business, and then that will go to lawyers and to go into discussion. In terms of managing online hate, yes, this is completely a challenge for Twitter, Facebook, and all the other social media companies. And as I keep saying, originally it was thought that these social media companies would somehow be moderating some rather educated comment from the world sort of town hall meeting. Turns out that's not the case. Turns out there's some very nasty people out there who are using some of this social media to propagate hate, to propagate propaganda, and so on. The world's a bad old place, and unfortunately, they're sitting on a gold mine right now because data is the new gold, is the new oil, if you like, as they well know. But how they moderate it, I mean, she has a huge job, as do all the bosses of all these social media companies, because the genie is a bit like AI. It's not going to go back in the bottle, and they really have to moderate it. How they do that, where the moderators actually come from. I mean, most media organizations have at least an editorial board, but I'm pretty certain that editorial board does not necessarily, like a newspaper like the Times or the Financial Times, I'm sure that doesn't have a 24-hour, 24/7 oversight every minute of every piece and every bit of information that those publications, those media centers are actually putting out. That is the challenge that Twitter and faces. And that's an expensive process. Doing news properly is a very, very expensive process, and otherwise it's just journalism, which Twitter is going to have to start paying news organizations as well. It's incredibly complicated.
Well, Michael, two quick comments. The old song says, diamonds are a girl's best friend. So I take your advice. You say, gentlemen, this is the time to buy diamonds. Diamonds have been plunged by 18%. And I have two bachelors right here with me in the studio. So maybe they should start first, and I will follow suit. As for Turkey, maybe Ms. Erkan will lose her job. You will recall that President Recep Erdogan sacked 3 central bank governors in 3 years, or within 2 years. And so he may end up sacking Ms. Erkan, who is from First Republic in the US, from Wall Street. So even if the rise that you are talking about happens, the question will be, how high would that rise be? Morgan Stanley and, Chase Morgan, they have different opinions on this. So maybe she will lose her job. Maybe Sismek may also lose his job. Erdogan having promised that he will stay on course. Anyway, my question is, UK has become, it looks like, a stagflation nation. Everybody is blaming the Bank of England. The Chancellor's economic advisors are blaming Bank of England. The senior Tories are blaming Bank of England because of the increase in mortgage rates. What do you think is likely to happen? As the Bank of England failed, is recession inevitable?
Well, put it like this. If it were me, and I'm not in charge, I would give the Monetary Policy Committee a big shake-up, because there is no doubt in my mind at all. And I think, and I have been talking to previous people who worked on that, who do not want to be identified, but they are concerned that what the Monetary Policy Committee, i.e., the committee, just as it does in the United States, and I'm not exactly sure what happens at the Central Bank of Nigeria, but for what it's worth, these people sit there and decide, and some are hawkish, some aren't, some are dovish. But it's pretty clear that these people do not have down-to-earth experience of either running a business or seeing business. I think there are too many ex-Treasury officials on this. I think there are too many people out of universities on the Monetary Policy Committee, and they are not noticing what's going on in the country as a whole. They get this granular info. This is the most frustrating thing. When I was working as a day-to-day journalist, going to the Bank of England on a weekly basis, I always used to ask them, how do you get, and they say, we've got agents all the way through the United Kingdom reporting back with what I call granular information. Right down to what businesses are doing, what their thoughts are, where their expenses are coming from. And it's clear to me, at least, and I think it's becoming increasingly clear as well to a lot of people, that they have lost control of this, number one. Number two, I don't think it's helpful for Jeremy. It's being reported this morning, I think he picked up on it, that the Chancellor's advisors are now blaming the Bank of England for what's been going on. Well, sure, I mean, why not? Why not join in the blame game? But this is the Chancellor who is saying, I don't care what it costs, I'm going to bring inflation down. Now, as you know, with politics, nothing happens until it happens. And of course, I think something will happen. And I think that Labour may push this. But as I said yesterday, I don't think it's within the purview or the power of politicians to do anything. What they can do, I mean, it can be that maybe they persuade the mortgage companies and the banks to make mortgages longer. It may be that they alter the makeup of those mortgages, but this is borrowed money, and at some stage it has to be paid back.
Okay, maybe the Labour Party is probably being opportunistic in this matter. Thank you very much, Michael. Thank you very much indeed. Now for business updates across the African continent, Rotus Udiri joins us. Good morning, Rotus.
Good morning, everybody. Yes, just to jump right in, I'll start with India and what Michael Wilson was referring to with investors eyeing India. That is the model that Nigeria has to follow. You have Narendra Modi, red carpet rolled out for him. There he is with Elon Musk. Elon Musk saying that investment is going to come to India soon. They were talking about a range of issues. Apple opened a store, 2 stores there. Tim Cook himself flew out to India to go and open those stores. Joe Biden is going to be talking to Narendra Modi. I mean, India is a $3 trillion economy, 4th or 5th largest in the world. Investors, again, as Michael Wilson was talking about, I need, if all this talk about the Naira, where it's going, having to FX flows to come in, Nigeria really needs to emulate where India is now as far as where we need to go. Speaking of the Naira and speaking of the floats, intraday, yesterday, it hit 815 to the dollar, though it did close at 763. So price discovery is still going on the INE investor exporter window. So it touched that. It's still fluctuating, but again, the closing rates as of yesterday on the INE window was 763, and it's actually almost like, they were at par with the parallel market on Tuesday, but that was only brief. Parallel market now is going at about 748, 750 thereabouts. So we're seeing that happens. The price discovery is still continuing. The impact on airlines. Nairametrics was reporting that IATA had pegged international airfare to 770, but they are yet to confirm it. Reached out to IATA folks, but I haven't heard back from them yet. So international airfare is going to be impacted. I think Doctor mentioned it when he was talking about the revenue discussions for public airfare, how these things are getting out of reach for the average Nigerian. So with where the INE window is, collapsing everything in there, airfare is probably going to go up because funds are still trapped. Remember we talked about this, the 2.2 billion that's blocked around the world. 68% of these blocked funds are with the top 5 nations, and this is forcing the airlines that are there to have to reprice their tickets upwards, particularly for Nigeria, because they've got to get their funds out. And you can say that backlog now has to be cleared. That $812 million backlog for Nigeria has to be cleared in order for funds to be able to be repatriated, and the market has to play its role. Remember the quotes from Willie Walsh, who heads IATA, saying that governments have to work with the airlines in order to get the money out of the respective countries. So a lot to look into as far as how this free floating of the naira is going to impact different sectors, but aviation is going to be a major focus as far as the nation is concerned. To South Africa, we saw the inflation cool to a 13-month low of 6.3%. April it was 6.8, and I think the target, economists had forecast was I think 6.5 or so. The benchmark rate is 8.25. They will be meeting, I believe, July 20th to make their decision. Yeah, so it was 6.3 actually. The forecast was 6.5, April was 6.8, and the benchmark rate is at 8.25. So the South African Reserve Bank may actually cool its heels at its next meeting. And that's our quick update on the continent.
Rotus, you see, yes, we want price stability. This price discovery, this our forex going like a yo-yo and all of that. There's an effect on poor people. It's biting hard. Ticket prices have gone up. Anything that has to do with forex now, there's instability.
I won't call it instability.
No, I will call it instability. You know why?
Why?
The reason why we call it instability is that the impacts and the pass-through effect on people, you don't even know what to benchmark for.
Well,
and that's that's the problem on ground as we speak. Coupled with the other things that have been done, there's a niggling impact on people. Don't get me wrong, because people have problems with understanding nuanced arguments in this country. I am for a convergence, but I'm also for fixing our structural problems. I hope we don't go to a case of the 80s, 86 again, when they say, leave it. And we did, and they said he was going to find his level at 3 naira to $1. And since then, it's been climbing, mountain climbing. I hope you people are the economists too. Nigerians are suffering. Let's be saying that every time. Nigerians are suffering, and the suffer is too much.
All right, just two quick questions for you, Rotus. Number one, with the plane tickets and the effect of the dollar rate. What impact would they have on local operators? Will there be any significant impact?
No,
and then the second, I know it's international, but I mean, how would they respond? Is this an opportunity for them? Is there an advantage in any way for them? That's what I meant, not in terms of their prices. Okay. Then the second thing I was going to ask with regards to the I&E window is, will the CBN be forced to intervene at this point? Do they have to intervene?
Yeah, so the CBN has clarified that what they'll be doing is a managed float. So a managed float is where at certain price points, if it spikes to 1,000 or 1,500 naira per dollar, then they will have to deploy parts of their reserves. So it's a supply-demand thing. If you deploy more dollars into the market, you increase it, and then the price comes down. So it's a managed float that they're going to be doing. As far as the local, the only airline that goes international is Air Peace. So I think Tel Aviv was the latest destination that they added to their routes. But this is the thing. If you are operating in Nigeria and people are purchasing tickets in naira, for international flights where you're going overseas, you are still going to be impacted. So whoever you are, international or local, if you dare to go overseas, then you're going to be impacted as well on pricing.
On the exchange rate, which is something that even President Tinubu's team has been selling in France, saying that, investors want to come to Nigeria because of the harmonization of the exchange rate. But the Nairametrics story that you referred to talked about 3 stages. It talks about the volatility stage, it talks about the speculation stage, transition phase, the analysis calls it, and then it talks about CBN intervention stage. Where are we right now? The issue about demand and supply, that's obvious enough. You know, when they harmonized the exchange rate, they said, look, for market forces will determine what is happening. So where are we right now? And then when it gets to the speculation stage, what do you recommend to speculators, including people who have to pay school fees?
Yeah. So we are at the volatility stage because, again, if your intraday rate is hitting 815 and closing at 716, there's a lot of swings. And for speculators, there's no incentive to speculate because the INE weight 763 is higher than the parallel market rates. So the parallel market rate, you're actually better off going there. So there's little incentive right now for speculation. So again, this is a process. Price discovery is a process. If the four of us are arguing over the price of this phone, that's price discovery. So until we all settle on what the price is,
When will the CBN intervene?
the CBN it's a managed float, so the CBN will only intervene when the price gets to alarmingly high levels. So right now it's not going to
when
do
we are all dead.
So there is not a full
function.
float there, Rotus.
Yeah, I just said it's a managed float. They said it's a managed
But they
float.
said they have removed all layers before.
No, the CBN clarified and said it was a managed float. So that's where we are.
Thank
That's
you
where
very
we are.
much,
Okay,
Rotus.
you're welcome.
These
Thank
are questions that
Yeah,
we
we're
should worry
asking,
about
certainly.
because we are all in the same
We are.
market. We are victims
Doctor,
of market forces.
are we in the same market with you?